Morning. Good morning, everyone. We're live now. Welcome to our Budget Committee meeting for Wednesday, November 25th, 2020. It's 11 a.m., a little different time. Thought that perhaps there might be people that our earlier time didn't work for them, so we've got something just a little different today for probably about, I would think, 3 hours or maybe a little bit more, depending on our deliberations. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time and see if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing none, just before we get started, I have an announcement. At 12:55 today, Ontario will be testing the Alert Ready emergency alerting system. This message will be sent through smartphones while we're in budget deliberations. Residents are reminded that this is a text and they should not call 911 for information about the test. Using 911 for non-emergency calls could delay help for people experiencing real emergencies today. So for more information, please visit alertready.ca. So we will know at that point when we jump out of our seats that we have a few minutes. With that, we will ask if there's any declaration of interest at this time. Seeing none, I do not have any deputations at this point. We're down to item D, and that's presentations. And I believe we're going to start off our morning with our East Gwilimbury Public Library presentation. Good morning.
Hi, Diana. Diana, did you want to start off?
Sure. I just didn't know if I was allowed to go. Okay. Good morning. Okay, thank you. Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Diana Robichaud, and I'm here representing the board of East Gwilimbury Public Library. Virtually with us today is our acting Chief Executive Officer, Angela Ramsey, and Heather Albus, the acting Deputy Chief Executive Officer. Ontario libraries are cost-effective, close to home, and adapt to the priorities of the people and community they serve. Every year, EGPL endeavors to show council how we meet the needs of our community, and I think this past year, our employees went above and beyond to be agile as well. They made the commitment to the community and provided flexible services and transformed programming within weeks. Demand has been for digital content, access to technology, and skill development, and we have the digital literacy specialist on our team to enhance those services. By making smart, targeted investments, the library makes sure that people, no matter where they live or learn, has access to our modern, cost-effective services. Our 2021 library budget is reflective of this new environment. We continue to work with our partners, including the town, to prove our value to the community despite limitations of COVID and continuously adapt to new circumstances. The budget we have put forward is considered conservative and a baseline budget. We are still dealing with uncertainty in provincial funding, a global economic crisis, and stabilized growth in our town, but we will continue to do our best to work together by reviewing our master plan, completing the renovation at Mount Albert branch, and continuing the work for the design on the new branch in Queensville. Specifically, we'll focus on adding to our multilingual collection, e-collections, and a mobile holds locker. A recent comment from a patron was, "I love our library for the programs and resources it offers. I love the option to check out print books or ebooks and the variety of selection. I have been making extensive use of the ebook option throughout the pandemic. I appreciate the effort and work our library does to offer such variety to our growing community." Angela and Heather will speak to our budget proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Good morning, Madam Mayor, councillors, and any members of the public that may be attending today. My name is Angela Ramsey, acting Chief Executive Officer at the East Gwilimbury Public Library. On behalf of the Library Board, I am pleased to present an overview of the 2021 library budget. Next slide, please. A brief overview of library services. The library provides many free or low-cost programs and services to residents of East Gwilimbury and is supported by 16 full-time positions. The library's vision is to be the social heart of the community and to build a welcoming space for all. Building community takes a web of collaborative relationships between a number of organizations and individuals that work together to weave a living network of people, events, and experiences. Libraries are one of the threads it takes to intricately weave together a community. Its role is to support a healthy and active community, to nurture literacy in all its forms, to encourage personal growth, and to be a safe place where everyone belongs. As we interlace ourselves with other threads, we create a strong community that is a destination for discovery, vitality, and connection. Next slide, please. I will now turn the presentation over to Heather Oblas, Acting Deputy Chief Executive Officer, to review 2020.
Thank you, Angela. Good morning. My name is Heather Oblas, and I am the Acting Deputy Chief Executive Officer at the East Gwilimbury Public Library. 2020 presented many new and unexpected opportunities for the library to serve local residents. To start off the year, we introduced a new point of sale system, allowing additional payment options for our customers. We also hired our first digital literacy specialist to support our growing technology needs. This staff member has already delivered 120 tech support programs this year. In mid-March, our service priorities changed in unexpected ways. Upon the mandated closure for COVID-19, the library worked quickly and creatively to meet new demands in an unprecedented context. We launched our first virtual programs in March, offering 250 virtual service sessions to date. Virtual and phone reference became our primary modes of assisting the community, with staff answering more than double the number of virtual questions from 2019. Tech Help live streams and tech tutoring were set up to help customers transition to a new reality dependent on digital connection. We expanded our virtual presence both socially and functionally, creating an online hub for customers to enjoy programs, resources, and services from the safety of their homes. Then, as communities began to reopen, the library offered its first ever curbside service, seeing over 1,600 visits between the branches, which averaged 35 visits per 4-hour shift. Despite the challenges and limitations, it was clear that the community continued to value its local library. We were able to reopen to the public under modified conditions on September 23rd. Excited to serve customers in person once again, the library held and continues to hold safety as its highest priority for staff and customers, adjusting its spaces and protocols to ensure a safe environment. Next slide, please. I will now review the key metrics on page 71 of the budget binder, which is page 58 if using the online version. Despite the challenges of 2020, the library was able to chart a new course amid closures and rapid changes. Our open hours dropped by 60% this year, which is a big reason behind the decreased in-person visits. However, online use only experienced a minor dip, which speaks to how the library maintained a virtual presence, even though physical materials and many services remained inaccessible for a significant part of the year. Despite the closures, active cardholder numbers remain steady, seeing only a minor decrease. Active cardholders are those who have a library card that they have used within the last 2 years. E-library card registrations, which are included with the active library card count, have more than doubled this year from 2019. Through closures and reduced hours, prospective customers continue to look for ways to access the library. Next slide, please. The library transitioned its suite of programs to virtual this year. As you can see, prior to the closure, the library was seeing steady growth in programming over the past 3 years, seeing significant increases in participants each year since 2017. Despite a decrease in 2020, we offered over 600 programs this year, seeing over 16,000 viewing minutes for our virtual programs alone, which is over 8 hours of viewing time per week since our closure in March. As expected, print circulation was greatly affected by our closures. However, digital resources stood in to meet customer demand. Although digital resource popularity has been rising steadily over the past number of years, we saw our biggest annual increase on record this year, with a 48% increase in digital use. Serving an important role in the library's digital presence, social media engagement dramatically increased this year, evidence of how staff and residents found new ways to engage with each other in our online environment. This graph is showing how our social media engagement doubled on Facebook in 2020, a trend that we are seeing across all of our social media platforms. In summary, this year, the library maintained its core services by transitioning to a virtual hub for a good part of the year. By adapting to the circumstances using a customer-focused approach, the library provided a sustaining thread in the fabric of our community during a time of isolation and uncertainty, maintaining its role as a central community service. Next slide, please. A brief overview of borrowing trends provides some telling information about our community. These top picks lists provide a bird's eye view of our most popular collections. Looking at these lists, we can make some assumptions on how and why residents use the library. For leisure reading, to read stories with children, which would support early literacy development. For entertainment, as shown by our popular DVD collection. And for learning and skill development, as shown by the use of our nonfiction collections. It is no surprise that hotspots have the highest turnover rate in our collection. This means our hotspots see the highest number of checkouts per item than any other collection. The constant demand for these devices demonstrates how the library is instrumental in bridging the digital divide, supporting reliable internet connections for those who do not have this technology at home. Broadly speaking, our community is looking for access to materials and to a digital world that supports leisure, learning, and the activities of daily life. The library is growing in its capacity to provide access to the resources our community seeks, and we are excited to see how we can further develop our collections and services to enrich and help residents live out their daily lives. Next slide, please. I am now going to turn it over to Angela Ramsey to complete the budget review.
Thank you, Heather. This year, the pandemic has demonstrated how much communities rely on their local libraries. Looking forward, as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, libraries play a role in rebuilding our community by offering free access to educational material to support at-home and virtual learning, access to printing and photocopying services for small businesses and homeschoolers, as well as Wi-Fi access within and outside the facility and through the Hotspot Loan Program. We continue to build literacy in the community by offering virtual reading programs, Camp in a Box, books for babies at South Lake Regional Hospital, and through portable program kits, which we handed out over 400 this year. Our monthly food pantry, which served 460 clients this year, links residents who are experiencing food insecurities with access to food and a free library card. Libraries create considerable benefits per person with a high return in investment. As we move into 2021, libraries are an essential part of the COVID-19 recovery. They are cost-effective, close to home, and adapt to the priorities of the people they serve. Libraries matter. Next slide, please. Now, as we move into the library's 2021 operating budget, starting on page 69 of the budget binder or page 56 on the online version, I will walk you through the changes to the library's budget. Next slide, please. Jumping ahead to page 73 of the budget binder, or page 60 of the online version, you will see that this year the library adjusted its budget to reflect the current environment. While there is a 2% increase to the total expenditures, modifications were made to offset increases. The main driver for the increase is the salaries and benefits line, which includes standard step increases, applying results from the 2019 market review, as well as a proposed cost of living adjustment at 0.5%. With minor increases to the facilities costs, all other budget lines have either been reduced to offset increases or remained the same over last year. As we enter a new normal, we are presented with an opportunity to reimagine library services and reconnect with our core values. In doing so, the library board has approved to pilot a fines-free approach for 2021. The reduction in revenue generated by fines, as well as a projected loss in program revenue, represents a decrease of just over $10,000. As a result, there is a net budget increase of 3%, or just over $50,000. This practice follows suit with many public libraries close to home, including Vaughan, Barrie, and Brampton, just to name a few, and brings a lot of unexpected benefits to the library. Eliminating fines lifts the barrier on usage, increases circulation, aligns with the mission of the library, and reduces financial strain on our residents. For libraries, the benefits of going fines-free outweighs the revenue and sends a strong statement that we are here for everyone. To summarize, the library services budget has a modest net increase of $50,000 for 2021, which includes an increase in the salaries and benefits line and no other major adjustments to note. This budget allows the library to maintain existing programs and services and build new ones as we enter the new year. Before I move on to the next portion of the presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the operating budget.
Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. Are there questions from members of council? I'm not seeing any. We'll proceed. Sorry, Councillor Persichini, was that?
Yes, I was asking a question. Due to COVID-19, it may be irrelevant, but how much have we saved because we haven't had full operation, or have we saved any money at all since March?
The library is anticipating a surplus at the end of the year, and we have been working on finance to return a portion of that to the town. I can get final numbers by day end.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just gives me an idea what's the operational aspect. Thank you so much.
Sure, I can provide that.
Councillor Roy DeClemente and then Councillor Crothers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Councillor Persichini. I know that the library is projecting a modest surplus, but I think we should keep in mind that the majority, or as we can see from the budget binder ourselves, the majority of the expenses lies in the salaries and benefits line. And so that wouldn't give us a great deal of savings, other than we may have had some operational gapping dollars due to a maternity leave and so on. Again, we would also be spending on our materials budget because we would want to continue to support the library's needs and the demand in the community. So, for example, instead of buying printed books, the library shifted over and bought more electronic resources to support the demand for ebooks as the pandemic wore on. So there isn't a huge savings in not being open, but there is a modest one. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. I want to get a better idea about how digital loans are funded. Councillor Roy DeClemente was talking about purchasing digital copies. I know when I access the library, it's through an app, through a central thing. I don't really understand how it all works, but I'm wondering if you can help us understand what the cost is to the library when a resident signs out an ebook.
Sure. So just to answer quickly, we have a few online programs. So just for example, we use Overdrive, which is a consortium with all of Ontario libraries. And you would buy copies based on the publisher. So it's not to say that there's unlimited copies of every book. It's basically based on what publishers allow in the system, and then we would buy certain titles. I could provide you with a more comprehensive report on like how much an average title costs, how much usage that title gets per person, per resident, if that's something that would be helpful.
It'd be interesting just to know, because when you say we, are you talking about we the library or we the consortium? And I know there's Overdrive and there's Libby and there's Hoopla. And so maybe this isn't a time to do a deep dive into that, but I think it would be very interesting, especially given the increase in the number of residents accessing digital materials. If at some point we could have a presentation on these different platforms, how they work, what do we own and what do we own through the consortium, and you know, what is the cost of giving our residents more access. I'd be very interested in a deeper dive into digital.
Sure. So just to answer the one question quickly, it's both things. So we pay for the consortium, which comes with like a certain amount of titles, but then we also pay into an Advantage program, which buys us additional copies only for our card holders.
Oh, okay.
So just what Councillor Roy DeClemente was saying earlier, that we put allocated money into that, so our residents have quick access to the hottest titles.
Excellent. And Overdrive, Libby, and Hoopla, are they all the same, or are we paying for different things on each of those platforms?
So Overdrive and Libby are the same product, and Hoopla is a separate product that we also pay into.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'd be happy to provide a presentation on that at a later date.
If others are interested, I'll leave that up to the mayor to decide. Thank you so very much. I'm interested.
Thank you. Well, we always have workshops in January on a variety of topics. So I've been making a list through our budget process, and I've now added that one to it, and we'll see how many other people have an interest in diving a little deeper. Sure. Any other questions? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Carruthers took some of my questions. I think it would be of value to look at the differences or similarities between Hoopla and Overdrive. Is there a need to have both, or anyway, the topic for another day. My other question is, when you were forecasting this budget, were you anticipating an open to the public date where it could be a little more, you know, once we're hopefully all vaccinated and getting back to as close as normal as we can? I was just wondering if you picked a date out of the calendar.
Well, forecast. I haven't picked a date, but we are actually open now. So we are servicing the public. So we did base the budget on service levels pre-COVID. So in the new year, we will be looking to expand our open hours to include Sundays as we normally would. So yeah, so I would say in January, resuming our regular hours.
Okay, and sorry, I was meaning, you know, does that factor in full capacity? Because I know we have limitations to how many we can have inside at the moment.
We haven't chosen a date based on full capacity. We'd just be working with, you know, health guidelines. But this budget is based on a baseline budget based on service levels prior to COVID.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation as always. I just was reminiscing that your tagline of libraries matter. I ran into a lady the other day in the grocery store who came up to me, didn't know her, came up to me and said that the libraries are a lifeline for her for homeschooling right now. So just one of many, many that appreciate the good service that you provide. So thank you very much. Could I have a mover and a seconder?
Oh, there is more to the presentation.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just move through. If that's okay?
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. So the library has selected 3 key areas of development for next year: expanding our technology and digital initiatives, responding to growth patterns, and aligning our services and spaces to match the community needs. We know that this is a critical year to develop and expand our services as priorities have shifted. In line with previous years, the demand for virtual programs, skill development in digital literacy, and expanding library services online is evident. In 2021, we will expand access to online content, improve the experience of our virtual branch, and improve technology supports that will ensure service continuity. We will respond to growth next year by continuing to develop plans for our new branch in the Health and Active Living Plaza. We will expand collections such as piloting a textbook collection to support education and at-home learning, grow our multilingual collection to include youth titles, and add new sensory take-home kits. Finally, in 2021, we will see responsive service design as we take a close look at the needs of our community as library use and priorities have shifted. Our team will respond by designing and delivering programs for all ages that support educational and leisure activities, tailor our customer service to meet the immediate needs, and expand our community-based and school and homeschool outreach programs. As a priority, we will maintain alignment with regional health and safety best practices so that we can remain open and continue to offer resources and services in a safe, effective manner. Next slide, please. The library has 5 capital projects slated for the year, 3 of which are open projects and will be completed in 2021. These can be found on the open capital project list for library services, and they include updating the library's master plan and completing the Mount Albert renovation, which will add study rooms at the branch, a service that saw a 36% increase in bookings at the Holland Landing branch in 2019. A new and exciting service for 2021, we will be implementing a library vending machine as part of the modernization capital project, expanding our service points in the community and offering residents a grab-and-go model of service. Next slide, please. The library is requesting capital funding for 2 new projects found on pages 103 and 104 of the budget binder and pages 79 and 80 online. They are the replacement of IT equipment following a replacement schedule. This includes the replacement of some hotspots, Chromebooks, and workstation equipment. Next slide, please. We also have the library materials request, which is an annual request to maintain a current and accessible collection. The library materials capital request remained the same as 2020 and does not include any DC growth-related funding for the year. Next slide, please. This September, a financial story was presented to Council, which included the status of the town of East Gwilimbury's reserves accounts. Operating reserves are important funds that offer fiscal sustainability for the municipality and provide stability for tax rates. Today, I would like to provide you with additional information on the library's operating reserve account and you will also find a comprehensive report as part of the supplementary information in the budget binder. As of 2019, the library reached its operating reserve capacity. As we move forward, we need to make sure we have adequate funds in place to prevent a deficit position. Since 2012, when our operating reserve account was established at 5% of the town's annual funding, we have grown significantly in staff and service capacity. As we continue to grow, it is imperative to be prepared for operational emergencies to maintain effective library operations. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we want to be able to respond to unanticipated costs and maintain staffing levels to support business continuity. This is also a unique time in our library's history as we gear up to start constructing the new Health and Active Living Plaza. Strengthening our operating reserves provides us with an opportunity to carefully respond to occasional business operation nuances such as these and any future situations that may call for additional support. For your consideration, the Library Board is recommending that the target for the library operating reserves be set to 7% of the town's annual funding, which is equal to approximately 1 month of library operating expenses. This change would be implemented in 2021 and provide stabilizing funding for unplanned operational events or projects and is a necessary step to mitigate risk. This represents approximately $35,000 increase in capacity. Once the target has been reached, any additional surplus would be returned to the town. Next slide, please. I'll conclude this year's budget presentation by thanking the town and members of council for their continued support during what has been a challenging year for residents, businesses, and local organizations. Together, we faced many unknowns and we leaned on each other's shoulder. As we move forward, we are excited to serve our community in unique ways, and at the core, we will always seek to inspire transformation, discovery, and belonging. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I have provided my contact should you need to reach out after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Questions, comments from members of council? I'm not seeing anybody at this time. That's a good sign that you've been very complete in what you've provided. Wonderful presentation, reminds us just how important the library is in our community. With that, Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just a quick comment, and that's that I wanted to congratulate Angela on a very smooth budget presentation. This was her first one ever, and in a very unusual year. Little did she know when she accepted the role of acting CEO that she would also be doing so in a pandemic. So I just wanted to acknowledge her efforts and that of her staff team, and just let council know that it's my honor to serve as council liaison to the board, and I'm really proud of everything that organization has done over the past several months. Madam Clerk, Madam Chair, I believe the clerk has prepared a resolution, and I would be happy to make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente, seconded by Councillor Crone. Be it resolved that the East Gwilimbury Public Library Services 2021 proposed business plan and budget presentation and review be received, and that the East Gwilimbury Public Library Services 2021 proposed operating budget be approved in principle, and that Budget Committee approve in principle and increase the operating reserve balance not to exceed 7% of the town's annual funding to the library, and that the 2021 new capital program East Gwilimbury Public Library Services be approved in principle as follows. And we have in front of us here library public IT replacement, $8,000, and library materials capital replacement, $94,760. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, ladies. You did a wonderful job today. We are at item E in our proposed business plan and budget, and we will proceed through our deliberations that we have been working on this week.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll kick off our day 2 review of the process. And firstly, I'd like to as well acknowledge Diana, Angela, and Heather for their efforts. Angela, as acting CEO, has really stepped up this year and should be acknowledged for her efforts. She's been an indispensable part of our COVID response control team, and she actively participates in our senior management team as well. So, you know, she's been a pleasure to work with, and at times when she hasn't been available, she has some key staff as well in her leadership team that have. And as I said, from our senior management group here, it's certainly been a real worthwhile process with the library. I think to start day 2, before delving into further departmental and council review sessions, we typically have an update of the prior day discussions and report back on some addendums. I believe an addendum was sent out late yesterday afternoon, so I'm going to pass it over to either Deputy Mark Velchich or Treasurer Warren Marshall to go through the addendum with their staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of committee. As CEO Webster indicated, we do have an addendum package. Based on our discussions on Monday, there were a few items that were requested some additional information on, and our manager of development finance, Carolyn Brown, is here, and she'll be able to step you through some of that additional information before we get into the discussion on the balance of our operating program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, members of committee and the public watching today. As mentioned yesterday, a third addendum to the budget was circulated, which contains some revisions following our first day of deliberations. I'm going to provide a brief summary of the material that's included in the package, which will replace some of the pages in your budget binders. As always with our addenda, we've got a covering memo, which will help you replace the pages as we go through. So just in order that, in the order that it's presented on the covering memo, the addendum includes a revised capital program summary. The only change on this summary is the shift of the ECSS project bunker gear equipment from the emergency management branch to the operations branch. This resulted in a reordering of the ECSS projects, which are also included in the package. We've revised capital project sheets for CI 21006, which is the Transportation Master Plan update, as well as wastewater 21001, the Water Wastewater Master Plan update, showing the remaining budget from the previous projects to have a more transparent picture of the total cost of these updates. We've revised the open capital. The only change here is to the Emerald Ash Borer Tree Replacement Program. The previous open capital list was comparing the budget for 3 of 5 years of the program against actual spending for all 5 years. So this has been revised. You'll see that the program no longer shows as being overspent, We did receive a request for more information on the program, including details of our urban tree canopy and how many trees were replaced, etc. So we have our manager of Parks Development and Operations here with us, and he'll provide a little bit more information following my walkthrough of this addendum. We've revised the reserve fund continuity schedule with one very minor adjustment made. We've also updated the budget survey feedback as we received an additional response following the first day of our deliberations. We didn't really touch on it on the first day, so I'm just going to take this opportunity to sort of summarize the responses for committee's benefit. This is located on the PDF page 19 of the addendum document that was sent out yesterday, or for clerks who are using the full electronic copy, it can be found on PDF page 176. As usual, we received a mix of comments, some in support of our finance team and the way we've managed our budget process here in East Gwilimbury. We also had some very specific comments, suggestions and requests. These include public parking in Holland Landing, more community events in all 3 wards, and some excitement to have a pool. When asked what 3 town programs and services were most important to residents, the most commonly recurring response was the library, followed by recreation. We've also received lots of feedback on social media, some of which has been quite positive, which is encouraging. Lastly, in the addendum package, we've replaced pages 16 to 19, which are the Mayor and Council proposed operating budget and the Mayor and Council community initiatives budget. These revised proposals resulted from the budget subcommittee meeting yesterday. So before passing it over to Frank Mazzotta to discuss the Emerald Ash Borer strategy, we can take any questions on the addendum package at this time.
Questions from members of committee? I'm not seeing any at this time, Carolyn.
Okay.
We'll move on.
Sounds good. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mazzotta.
Thank you, Carolyn. Through you, Madam Chair, as part of the financial update provided by the Manager of Development Finance, I would like to provide Council with a brief overview of the EAB program and its completion this year in 2020. In 2014, Park staff embarked on a 5-year Council-approved EAB program that involved the removal and replacement of urban ash trees on streets and within town-owned lands such as parks. The program's intent was to eliminate the risk associated with urban ash trees failing, which were infected with the emerald ash borer pest. As part of the town's budget process, capital funds were approved in each of the 5 years to deal with the identified risk. In the fall of 2020, Parks operations staff were successful in removing and replacing ash trees on urbanized streets, parks, and specific rural roads. As part of the EAB program, staff implemented an aggressive social media and public outreach campaign with the assistance of the town's communication branch, which resulted in a very positive outcome. So as part of some of the metrics for the EAB program, 700 urban ash trees were removed, 112 rural ash trees were removed, a total of 575 trees were replaced, and 20 ash trees early in the program were injected with a pesticide. As that was only a trial effort, of those 20 that were injected, only 10 remain alive. At this point, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzotta. Questions go ahead, please, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that verbal update. I think it would be helpful, given the scope and the budget that we allocated to this project, if we had a simple, even a one-page memo outlining these results, just for a little bit of closure and accountability to the public. Yes, this is an appropriate venue for that, but I'd like to see something in writing so that we can close the loop there as well. So I'm happy to see that on a future agenda of council. Thanks.
Questions, comments? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. And could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Roy DiClemente, Councillor Persichini, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Mazzata.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of committee. Just to recap on with the receipt and approval in principle of the library board's capital and operating budget, we've completed the review of all capital other than water and wastewater, which we'll be seeing in January. And we have 2 remaining operating budgets to go through, which is the Office of the CAO and the Mayor and Council. So I'm proposing that we start off with the Office of the CAO, and we'll have Mr. Webster go through his operating budget. You can find that starting on page 21 of the binder, or if you're following online, page 16.
Thank you, Treasurer Marshall. Madam Mayor, we are committed. I support Councillor Roy DiClemente's request. We would have put that in a memo, but we had Mr. Mazzata working on it late yesterday afternoon. So I think what we'll do is we'll have an addendum from today, if required, and we'll bring it forward to Council at our session next week to bring some full transparency and to any of the discussion items. The CAO's office has evolved over the years to be sort of the compendium of all the other departments as far as objectives, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we have what we acknowledge as one of the top administrations, certainly in York Region, and our structure has been transitioning over the years. So the org chart, I just like to go through. There's my direct office is still pretty lean and mean, hopefully, with myself and an EA. We also have carriage of the human resources function, and that's important. The people in the employee team that gets the work done in a very high morale environment, and always making sure we're providing the proper tools and development. That's where we are. I see Councillor Roy DiClemente is looking for a page number, and I think we have different page numbers. I'm in the old budget book. My page is 21. Maybe someone could help out with what page we're on here so that we could see. It's page 21 and PDF 16, apparently. So hopefully we'll be able to locate that. Just to go through, we've talked about the library CEO, and again, that's another area, not a direct report as they have their own board, but both Monica and Angela have sit on our SMT as a active listeners and participants, and as I said, Angela has been a key component of our COVID response. Our 7 areas, and that's expanded this year. It's traditionally been 6, but we have the Legal and Counsel Support Services led by General Manager Dean Horner, Corporate Services, and that's really transitioned under now Deputy General Manager, our Deputy CEO, Mark Valchich. That is going to be a business transformation, strategy, innovation, partnerships. And so you're going to see that rebranded as we move forward. Finance, we've actually purified that function, and that's our dollars and expenditure function. It's a very valuable role, and it's actually a fairly small department for that. That's under Warren Marshall, and Deputy Treasurer Valadima head that up, as well as Carolyn Brown is a key senior leader in that department. Development Services, we've had General Manager Marco Ramuno, who's joined us, has approximately 30 years of experience, but he's done a terrific job on building that team. And we have a freshly minted CBO, Andres Sione, who we appointed just recently last year and at the beginning of this year. And we're looking forward to some terrific stuff out of that area. Emergency and Community Safety Services, one of our key and very visible frontline areas. Council has invested heavily in that area since 2011. We're led by 2 veterans there, Chief Rob McKenzie and as well Deputy Ryan Jago. and again, very progressive, and we're up to speed with a full-time department and still have the very important paid on-call volunteers active in our community as key parts of our service delivery. Community parks, recreation, and culture, one of our biggest frontline areas, and as we know, probably the largest area impacted by COVID, and our programming and facilities. And Aaron Karmazin heads that up with the support of, again, a very experienced senior management team. And last but not least is General Manager Mike Molinari, again, a very veteran employee of not just our organization, but municipally. And he leads our key frontline services area for water, wastewater, transportation, roads, and that's our group. So at this point in time, Madam Mayor, we sit at about 160 plus minus full-time positions, and I think if we do equivalents to our other contract and part-time staff, we're currently about 200 employees equivalent. Servicing a community that at latest count, I believe we're about 35,000 population at this point in time. If we could go to the next slide. This is, again, a relatively new way of providing our service delivery. And what we've tried to do is to break down the silos a bit of the departmental submissions. And what we have here is the 4 coded council key strategic pillars or objectives, and those are typically having a culture of municipal excellence, providing quality programs and services for the taxes and the fees we charge, responsible growth and environmental stewardship is another key element, and then building complete communities. So those were the 4 strategic pillars that council approved as part of the strategic plan. So what we have done here is we've bundled primarily a lot of the departmental initiatives. Some of them are strictly corporate, but what we're hoping, and this is where I was trying to get some feedback, hopefully today or through this process, is just to make sure, A, we have the right ones here, and B, are there things that we're missing that should be here? And you know, the leadership team has done it. Really, we had a couple of workshops together to try to streamline this, and then the whole discussion of how do we handle COVID. And so we've emplaced a priority initiative this year, being the management and recovery from COVID-19, and we certainly hope management continues, but that the recovery starts soon and is well managed as we return hopefully to some form of normal community and program delivery for us in the new year. So on that, Madam Mayor, could I suggest maybe we take a pause and have any comments or discussion points from council on the objectives for 2021?
Thank you. Comments, questions, discussion? I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I am seeing a hand now. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Just because you asked.
Of course, of course.
My thought was that this is an incredibly aggressive list of priorities. There's a lot to be accomplished here, and I was happy to see that above all and at the top of the list was the response to COVID, and I think that's the lens with which we need to approach this list. You know, I had some engagements on social media with constituents, and one of the comments was, you know, oh, you're doing this during COVID, or you're doing that during COVID. And part of my response was, well, yes, we're continuing to collect property taxes, and we therefore have an obligation to continue to deliver services to our taxpayers. And so I think it's important that we don't lose sight of what we want to do at the end of the day, but that at the very top of that, we have our COVID response. And so that was sort of my initial reaction to this, to these 2 pages. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions, comments from other members? Councillor Crone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would echo what Councillor Roy DiClemente said. I think it's a aggressive set of priorities, but I think you need to stretch, so that's good. I like to see that. And there's one in particular that really caught my eye: review town practices regarding citizen engagement. And so I think that's really critical for us, as not just as elected representatives, but as staff. That owe our salaries to to the taxes that the residents pay. So I think I'm really glad to see that in there. So well done.
Thank you. Councillor Crothers.
Thanks. I agree. It's a very lengthy and aggressive list, and it's great to see that we're going to get so many things accomplished. I think the key is in the follow through and making sure that these things aren't just a list at this time, but that we get a follow up to find out which of these things were accomplished, which things are still in progress, which things fell by the wayside because other things took precedent. So I love this list, but I would really like to see a follow-up this time next year with this exact same list with comments on how much was it we were able to accomplish.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm not seeing Councillor Morton.
No, I was just sitting here looking over some more things right now, and I think the things that we've got in here and have been able to accomplish has to go to the amazing staff that we have that are working on this. And it will be interesting to see how much further they work before we go into the end of 2021. So that was just a comment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, always available later on. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The adjective we choose, I heard aggressive a couple times. I would prefer fulsome as sort of a more balanced approach. Certainly try to get things done. And it is true. Folks are still paying taxes. We're still providing programs and services. And very little has been set aside. And other than the direct programs and services, again, offered through CPRC, we're moving fully ahead on a lot of our key initiatives, and as we should be. The other thing I would like to note is just to speak to Councillor Carruthers, and I do agree, a list without follow-up becomes rather mundane, but we do follow up mid-year. And typically what we'll do is either in late December or early in the new year, we'll do a little bit of a community report card. We use it for our website. We use it for, and it goes back to that list. And you know what, even with COVID, very little has slipped through the cracks, if anything, this year. And so we'll be using last year's 2020 list to talk about what we achieved, what's still a works in progress, and any things that were set aside by COVID. But so stay tuned for that to be coming back to council in the very near future. Thank you for that. One thing we do use this for, just as a management team and a staff team, is once we get working on initiatives, it's often comforting to take a look at this list, which is a council approved priority list from all the business plans and budgets that have been seen, to make sure that in fact those initiatives are here. And I can tell you that sometimes towns and administrations go a little sideways when they start working on priorities that aren't on the approved council list. And so it's often for us a good refresher to take a look back. And we do a mid-year budget review. We haven't even talked about that yet, but that'll be another plan for next year, Madam Mayor. And maybe next year will be one of the most important mid-year ones if there in fact is a vaccine and things are normalizing, and it will allow council an opportunity to take a look at this list, amend it, add to it, and move forward. So on that note, I'm going to now move to our director, Michelle Collette of our Human Resources area. And as I said, the people side of the organization, the important employee team, is part of our mandate as well. And I just would ask Michelle to cover off some of our key priorities for 2021 from our Human Resources and Organization Development branch.
Good afternoon. Thank you, CEO Webster. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. I appreciate the time to share with you our key priorities with respect to our people. And as you can see, and CEO Webster spoke to our different categories. For example, we have our culture of municipal excellence, and within that, there's a list there, which is a great list. I just want to highlight a couple points. So part of our culture of municipal excellence work we want to do is to continue the support, the rollout of our CEO internship program, which is a great program that showcases the development of our staff, and we're really looking forward to that rollout as we head into 2021. As well, looking at our performance management and development program that supports our staff and helps build their careers as they grow and develop in EG. So those are some of the highlights, and also very important, as we are still in the pandemic situation, we want to prioritize our mental health and provide wellness and programs for our staff moving forward. We've been doing that consistently throughout 2020, and we will continue to do that in 2021. So those are some important highlights from that particular puzzle piece. With respect to quality programs and services, we want to continue to check in with our staff. We want to use our learning management system. We want to survey our staff and make sure that the programs and services we're offering them are meeting the needs to help develop them and move forward as a corporation. We're also going to be looking at our health and safety, continue with that under our responsible growth and environmental protection. And last but not least, to highlight building our complete communities, we're going to continue to develop our organizational culture and foster a healthy work environment that supports the work that our staff do. So those are the key highlights from that document, which you all have, which is on page 24 of our program. So that's it for me. I'll turn that over to CEO Webster. Actually, I'll continue with the graphs here. I'll take care of this one. So as you can see on the graphs here, these are some of our key performance indicators and metrics that we are looking at. We have many in HR, obviously, with all our great people factors. We wanted to showcase for you today our corporate training and hours spent in corporate training. So as you can see, given the COVID situation, we have continued to provide corporate training for our staff in a virtual manner, which has been really exciting and a great opportunity for innovation. So the hours are a little bit less than last year, but we will continue to, in the new year, actually we have some great initiatives through our N6 group that we will be implementing in the new year. So that just gives you an idea of the hours spent to date. With respect to average sick time, it's increased slightly due to the COVID situation, so I'm sure that's no surprise to anyone. Again, we do maintain an average of about 5 days, which is below norm. The norm's about 8. So that's an interesting statistic given the situation that we're in. And we're very proud to say at this time we have no cases of positive COVID with our staff population. We continue to monitor that every day, actually. The other metric we're looking at is employee turnover, which is flatlined or is at the same level as 2019. We've had a few staff leave. We had some at the beginning of the year and a couple throughout the COVID situation that left for different opportunities. However, happy to say we have a very solid percentage of our turnover is low, is what I'm trying to say. Our turnover is very low, and we maintain having our staff stay with us and develop and grow. And we are unique in that within our N6 population that we have a really robust program and embrace developing our staff. So thank you, Mr. CEO Webster, and that's it for me unless there's any particular questions on the people side.
Questions? I'm not seeing any at this time. Go ahead, Mr. Webster.
There's a number of other metrics we've discussed that we'll probably be bringing forward. Training dollars invested per employee. We also, one of the things that we try to do a little bit different, a whole lot better, is promoting from within. We've borrowed from the other organization, Madam Mayor, that you serve on, the York Region Police, and you know, I think their last 3 chiefs have been promoted from within their organization, and they do a terrific job of developing staff, and we're really we've been talking to our employees. Every single employee has been engaged about career development and discussions about career development, and I've often said, if you have good employees and you can give them a larger envelope of work, you might have to give a little bit more pay, but it's a lot more cost effective than hiring a whole new FTE and a whole new series of training and benefits. And it's one of the reasons I think in this pandemic that our budget has been quite manageable. There's a lot of other lower tier municipalities that are really struggling with cost control right now, and some of them have even had to go to 4-day work weeks and things such as that. So again, we feel that we've built a really good team, and it's a collaborative exercise with council, as reflected in our overall very modest budget increases. This year, the budget here, and I was a little disappointed, it has a $236 increase. I was really trying to flatline, but we didn't quite get there. And I think the biggest move here, and I think there's 2 things that I'd like to cover off. I know one of the ones is we've had a gentleman in our organization, Chris McPherson, who's been was working in our Parks and Rec area facilities, and he started health and safety on 1 day a week secondment, and then it became 3 days a week. And the envelope is now, with COVID and our learning management system and health and safety, we were able to carve out the budget dollars in the prior years to fund the position fully. And so we are putting him into the HR area on a full-time basis. It's not shown as a new initiative because we already had the funding, but it is a new FTE complement. I would like to clarify that. So that's, to me, one of our good news stories. And the other thing that is moving this year is there's a $50,000 expenditure for consultants. And I don't know, are we able to put the page up that actually has the budget on it? I'll challenge the staff team here. Okay, so you can see even with the addition of, we have a positive variance in salaries and benefits based on some benefit, and you'll see those $250,000 moving. That was the consultant retained to do the market review, and so those are the 2 biggest items. And essentially this year, it's a fully flatline budget out of the CAO's area, and I'll just summarize it at that, and have any questions or comments, Madam Mayor, at this time.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Surely we can find $236 to cut something on this page.
Done. Madam Mayor, done. Okay, we can move on if that be the case. And I do miss, I have to actually say one other thing, if I may, just as a side point. I don't know if she's listening or he's listening, but the Sandersons, both Gail and Barry, who have followed our council for years and years. I hope that they are still tuning in. We call them our fans, and they often are the ones that might ask a question at this time. So we hope they're well from the staff team, and I know council as well.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Can you just walk me through again about Chris McPherson's salary? It's a new, it's showing up in human resources for the first time this year, but we're not seeing a change versus last year.
My understanding, Councillor Carruthers, is that the dollars have been identified, that we've been building up from 1 day secondment to 3 day secondment, and we were able to reprofile dollars that we had for health and safety in the budget and through other corporate budgets, so that we were able to accommodate that FTE without having to add dollars to the overall salary budget. And if anyone else can provide a better clarification than that, I would ask them to speak at this point.
I need something more than reprofiling dollars. I need to know where the salary is in this budget.
It would be under the salaries and benefits line.
And under human resources. So what has come out of that line in order to put this additional FTE in?
I think what would have happened is that the 2020 initial budget would have been restated. So I'm not going to say more. I'm going to pass it off to the finance professionals.
Absolutely, a shell game I'm not comfortable with. The 2020 budget, I assumed, was the budget that we passed in 2020. And if you're saying that those numbers have changed, that makes me very uncomfortable.
Well, I wouldn't call it a shell game, that's for sure. It's the lowest tax regime in York Region as far as taxpayers, and so we certainly don't try to suggest but at times we do restate initial budgets for things like salaries and COLA adjustments and things like that. But I will pass it off to the finance team.
Val is available to speak to this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and CAO Webster. Through you to respond to the question, the funding for Chris McPherson was part of the reprofiling exercise for the EG 2025. So those details have been provided for exactly where those funding came from. There were some additional staff in the past. Those positions no longer are with us, one being the General Manager of Emergency Services, replaced by the Fire Chief. And so that's where the reprofiling came from, was through that initiative.
May I add that as well, Val, if I may? We've eliminated an FTE as well, Councillor Crothers, from our budget. So prior to your tenure with the town, we had a strategic coordinator position in the office of the CAO as well. And the strategic coordinator position was funded, it was a pretty senior position as a matter of fact, and that has now been split up. And so the dollars used for that initiative, which are no longer as an FTE and directly, so my office used to have 3 folks instead of 2. And that's another as part of our EG 2025. And I hate to use the word reprofiling. I don't like the word reallocating either, but I think what it is a transferring of former FTE salaries are being used to fund this position. So
yeah, so that's what I'm just trying to wrap my head around. And I'm thinking about our public who are tuning in, and we're talking about adding an FTE, and I have no qualms about adding an FTE and the job that Chris is doing and all that. I just want to be very clear on our budgeting when we're talking about adding an FTE and there's no change in the salary line. That means that something else is coming out. So if there was someone else that came out, an FTE that came out, I'm hearing you saying, but you said it happened before I was on council, which means it was years ago. I'm still very unclear here, and I just want our budget to be very clear. And the word reprofiling doesn't help me. I'm looking at just at the dollars and not at the rationale behind it. I'm looking at where does this FTE show up and why is there no change in our budget line? So no questions about why that FTE is there. It's strictly what's on the paper in front of us. I want to see that if we're adding an FTE, it's showing that we're paying that person. And I don't want to talk about reprofiling. I just strictly want to talk about the dollars, the figures that are on the page.
Okay, so Madam Mayor, may I suggest?
Mr. Marshall is available to make a comment.
Mayor, if I may, yes. I think we should report back on this, okay? Because it's the only new FTE position in the budget as far as I've been advised. So I think we'll have a report back through an addendum of the compensation paid to this position and the funding sources. And the funding sources are from savings and other positions that are either no longer with us. Councillor Carruthers, just to answer the one question, and Councillor Morton would support us on this, even though we didn't have the FTE working in the office of the CAO, we carried the salary dollars. And I think it was last year that Councillor Morton actually said, at what point are we going to deal with the fact that we have the salary dollars, but we don't have an FTE? And we've dealt with that through EG 2025 as well. So we will do a full public report on the duties, roles, responsibilities of this new FTE position. And we will also show the funding sources so it's be fully transparent, okay? And we'll bring that forward to council.
That makes it so much clearer. The whole reprofiling and some of the other language that was used just made me more confused than I was when I first asked the question. So if the salary is coming from a salary that had been held for an FTE, that was a position that wasn't filled, that's very clear to me, and I don't need more of a report. But when you started using words like reprofiling, it got me very confused. So thank you for clarifying that. And if that salary is coming from a salary that was there without a person in that role, then I'm very comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe, since the question has been made, that Mr. Webster, if you could come back with a report and the questions for perhaps other people as well have an interest. Councillor Roy Clemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further, and perhaps this could be part of the reporting back. I just pulled the budget binder for the budget book, the finalized one from 2020, and the salaries and benefits line from 2020 was listed as $1,042,869. And so the budget, and that was page 21 of 134. And then this budget binder on page 27 of 185 is saying that budget was $939,994. So for someone who's following along, yes, this is a bit of a microscopic look. It's challenging to understand what's happened. And so when you report back, it would be helpful to hear where that $102,000, $103,000, where it was moved to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Webster, could we have that back the next time we're meeting for budget?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. We'll be able to explain where the $103,000 that was in the CAO's budget has been transitioned to or moved to. Okay, and we will. So we have 2 items to report back on for next week, and we'll commit to doing that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments at this time?
Madam Mayor, not a question, but just a comment.
Go ahead, please.
I do have to support what Mr. Webster did say, because he will tell you also that every year I asked about that position and that money and why it was still sitting in his area, and he has finally come through and answered my question for me, and perhaps put it the way it should have been a few years ago. So thank you very much, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. If it was home budgeting, it would be called in case.
That's true.
Thank you very much. I believe now we were going to go to the mayor and council community initiatives, or do we have something else in between?
Madam Mayor, no, that's the last one that we would need to look at, is the mayor and council.
Very good. So we had the resolution is in front of us. Yes. Moved by Councillor Carruthers.
I'm waiting for that additional information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morton, seconded by Councillor Crone. Be it resolved that the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer 2021 proposed business plan and budget review be received, and that the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer 2021 proposed operating budget be approved in principle, and that council direct staff to report back on the salaries and benefits of the health and safety coordinator role. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That carried. Thank you. Okay. The last one we have on my paperwork, unless someone else can tell me something different, is the Mayor and Council Community Initiatives. And we do have a draft of the 2021 operating budget. We had a resolution of council a few weeks ago regarding setting up a committee, and I'm pleased to say that the committee met yesterday, Councillor Morton and Councillor Crothers, and we went through this entire community initiatives draft, as well as some other items. So I'm just not sure how we want to approach this. Mr. Marshall, you were there for the expert, being the expert, and I'm just wondering if you would be available to go through this at this time.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Yes, I can go through some of the changes that were made came out of the committee, the subcommittee. So if maybe we can just go to page 16 of the budget book, which we have the addendum that was sent out. So it's the last 2 pages of the addendum if you haven't replaced your binder pages yet. So there's basically 2 parts to the Mayor and Council budget. There's the administrative component of it, and then there's the community initiatives budget. So the only change that was made to the administrative component was a reduction of $5,000 for a budget line item that hasn't been used for several years. So the committee felt that it should be removed. So that's the only change that was made on this page 16. Excuse me. So if we can go to page 17, the next page. So I'll just highlight some of the changes that were made. So the first one for the Economic Development Advisory Committee, that was a change that was actually requested. So that was just to adjust their budget request for 2021. For the next item, the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, that wasn't a change from 2020, but there was another one-time request for $5,000 for the Tapestry of Taste in 2021 for the art show that's proposed. So they've asked for that funding to go forward to use at the Tapestry of Taste. There is a new committee that was formed, the Road Watch Committee, and they've requested $1,000 to get that committee on their way and produce things such as pamphlets and things like that. The Queensville Sharon Community Group requested a reduction in the funding that they had received from previous years, so we've adjusted that accordingly. And we've adjusted the Home Landing Community Group funding to be consistent with the Queensville Sharon funding requirements. So if you can turn the next page, please. So the car show, I'd like to remind council that the car show funding isn't actual funding that we spend. It represents services that we provide in lieu of the funding. And we've adjusted that to match what costs we've actually provided in lieu of funding. So we've adjusted that down. The neighborhood network has indicated that they have the funding that they require to complete their project in 2021, so they don't require any further funding. So that $10,000 has been removed. The Roots Connecting Communities, that's also based on the request that they have submitted to us for 2021, so we've reduced their budget amount accordingly. And the final one that I'd like to highlight is the committee contingency. So that's an amount that's available for in-year requests, and the subcommittee suggested that that amount should be increased to provide funding in the event there are some in your requests. So for example, the Trails Committee has actually requested $3,000 for providing signage. And the subcommittee felt that that should be coordinated with town staff to ensure consistency and make sure everything is coordinated. And it has been suggested that the staff liaise with the Trail Committee, and when they come up with their requirements, that a request come to council to provide that funding, and the funding would be available in the committee contingency to help them out with that. So those are the main changes that came out of the review with the subcommittee. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Marshall, for going through this with us yesterday and getting this turned around so quickly. Really impressed. Next year, we'll give you more time. There's just one slight error on the sheet on page 17. The broadband working group was previously funded at $2,500, and they requested $2,000, and that number shows up in the community initiatives column. But as you go over to the 2021 budget, it hasn't been corrected.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just, yeah.
Ah, got it. Yep. We'll
sorry, next is 2021. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There, right there. Yeah. That's great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well,
and I'll just expand a little bit for my colleagues that weren't at the subcommittee meeting. We doubled the community contingency and then brought down some of the individual committees, because we felt that it's better that people come to us when they have an initiative rather than just putting tons of money into each of these groups. It was better to keep them a little tighter, and then they can come to council when they have a big event, and we've got the money to support those events as they come forward, especially in these days where we don't know what next year's going to be like, when we're going to be able to have large-scale events. It was better to keep the budgets modest, but be able to have that contingency if some good events come forward. So thank you to the mayor and Councillor Morton for going through this yesterday. I think it was a very good process. Thank you.
And the contingency, as we all know, once we are out of the poor area that we're in right now, I suspect that many or most of these organizations that are committees of council will have events. I think that it'll be a very busy year of events and community engagement, much different than we've ever seen before. People are waiting for it, and I know that all of these organizations, in some way or another, continue to host events for the community. So they're feeling the pain right now, but I think that I'm hoping that 6,000 will be enough, and if it isn't, then we'll have to come back to council at that point. But I suspect that there'll be a lot of people wanting to celebrate and get together and have community initiatives right across our municipality. So thank you. Councillor Foster, you had your hand up, and then Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to comment the Trails Initiative. I think Warren mentioned 3,000. I think in our book that says 4. But we actually had a Trails meeting last night, and the information that Warren gave about kind of restructuring that and having a better plan going forward was debated greatly, let's say, in last night's meeting. So I can provide more information about that when we actually get to it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had supported the idea of having a subcommittee, and one of the things I had respectfully requested was that we be consulted on our committees and the requests that they had made, because it seemed appropriate from that perspective. And so it was a bit of a surprise this morning to try and figure out what happened yesterday and how this affects the committees that I represent. And I'm glad to hear that Councillor Foster has spoken up as far as the Trails Committee is concerned. I'm glad to see that we've created some consistency in the funding. I did have a couple of questions as far as, for first of all, the Road Watch Committee. I don't know if have we appointed a Road Watch Committee? I don't know where this request came from. And so my thought would be, if we don't have a properly constituted committee, then why would we be carrying budget for it? And why wouldn't we simply roll that into the contingency? Secondly, we changed the name on page 18, the Mount Albert Garden and Horticultural. I thought they were now called the East Gwilimbury Gardeners, so I didn't know what happened there, or if there are two organizations that we're funding. And then there were a couple of organizations that we were funding. For example, Smart Commute. They appear to be asking for $8,000. Their report to us that we received, I think it's page 176 of 185 of our binder. Their report to us told us that they used $1,325 of the grant we gave them for overhead. Members of staff and council who've been around for a while know that when I see something like that, I usually complain when I see miscellaneous or contingency, and quite frankly, I was challenged to find that we were using our tax dollars to support overhead and not direct program service delivery. So just a few comments to start the conversation, but again, it's a bit challenging because I don't know what's taken place and how the budget binder has changed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I can tell you that yesterday we went through this with the idea that we were going to have deliberations, if it wasn't today, within the next few weeks for our budget. So it wasn't a matter of complete, it was a matter of opportunities to have discussion. And we had 3 people available that went through it, along with thank you to Mr. Marshall. Any other questions, comments? So in hearing some of the thoughts about where we landed with this yesterday, it's not a science. It was certainly a matter of trying to find the right amount of money. And again, we're back to what is 2021 going to look like? And how many of these organizations, in fact, are going to need dollars? Some may be doing something quite different and need more than we've initiated at this time, but it was really a guesstimate based on what they've done in the past and the kind of opportunities that may present themselves moving into 2021. Thank you for highlighting the Mount Albert Garden and Horticultural have changed their name. I wasn't aware of that. I did see that name, the new name out there, but didn't realize they were one and the same.
I don't know, Madam Mayor. I don't know if they've changed their name. It just was changed on our binder. Yes. I thought they were still the E.G. Gardeners, but maybe someone can clarify for me.
Councillor Morton, could you clarify for us?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it has been changed to the East Gwilimbury Gardeners.
Hence the change. Ms. Adema, could you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, we have updated that in the financial budget system. Just with last night's changes quickly, they didn't get done within the system. So in the final budget print, it will reflect the correct name.
Thank you very much. We might have some others there that are loosely described on what they do. Perhaps we would be able to go back through them all at this point and have another look at them to make sure that we're identifying the actual name of the organizations that we're assisting. Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. Further to Councillor Roy Clemente's concerns about Smart Commute, concerns were raised at the subcommittee meeting, and we've asked staff to go back and take a look at what they're doing, the amount that they're asking. There was that one, and there was the Sutton Agricultural Fair. It's only $750, but they did not request any funding. It's something that we would like to support. I think it was Councillor Morton who was saying maybe we could support young farmers or something like that with that money. So that one, staff are going back and asking the fair if they're counting on our $750. And if not, we'll look at other ways to support that portion of our community. So yes, your concerns were echoed at the committee meeting. I feel like there was one other that staff were going to report back. I'm wondering if it was the Roots Connecting Communities. There was one other that we were going to get a little bit more information. So the purpose of the subcommittee meeting was just to align the requests with the budget page and try and put some sort of framing on it, not to take away any discussion today, but just to kind of get it into a form that we could have those discussions from, because the page we had been looking at in previous years and before the subcommittee meeting was just a duplicate of last year, and then we had all the funding requests separate. So it was just to spend an hour kind of coordinating that so that this discussion could happen. So this is in no way like a final approved budget from the subcommittee or anything like that. It's just trying to get it into a position that we can discuss it. And to Councillor Foster about the Trails Committee, the request was for $4,000. It was $1,000 last year. The additional $3,000 was for the signs, so that's where we got the $3,000 from. We did put in the $1,000 that they had last year. The additional $3,000 for signs is what we had set aside, thinking that should probably come from another budget rather than a community committee budget. So that's where the difference is. Hope that clarifies.
Thank you very much. Roots Connecting Communities was the one that we had questions about as well. It was a new initiative last year, and we haven't received any reporting on how many individuals that they supported in our community. And it was a blend between Georgina and East Gwilimbury, and we want to make sure that it's reflective in the dollars as well. So that's one that we had listed, and I'm not sure if Mr. Marshall, you had any others that we needed to do a little work on.
Madam Mayor, those were the two that I had listed through our discussions.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. So I think that this one still is it has not landed. It's still moving. We still have some answers that we need to have before we can move on this one, and we will be meeting again. We have other items that are not finished as well. So if we can leave this one until such time as we have the answers to the questions that were posed yesterday, then I'm comfortable with that. Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to yourself and Councillor Carruthers and Morton for taking a stab at this. And I think it did streamline a lot of this discussion and tried to help out. I know that the Trails Committee is likely very passionate about their project that they've proposed, and I wonder whether it may be something that we could support through a capital request that would come through CPRC, and that might be another way of approaching it. When staff come back to us, I'd like to have an understanding as far as Neighborhood Network is concerned. I know we previously have supported their tree planting. There's a budget report, I think, about a special project that there was an initiative that they were putting together to do a demographic review. I'm just curious about the status of that project and when we might expect a report. And just generally, we feel really strong about the Neighborhood Network, and we've got a really good working relationship with them. So I just wanted to understand with a little bit more clarity how we were supporting them in this budget. And then just further to the comment about the Sutton Agricultural Fair, I know we do have an active 4-H club in East Gwilimbury, and perhaps that might be another option if we were talking about young farmers. That might be another option for us to explore supporting our youth who are working on those initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? So I'm wondering,
maybe,
go ahead.
Sorry. Maybe I can comment on the Road Watch Committee. It was approved by council when we were doing the approval of all the other new groups that we would be having a couple of years ago. And then York Region Police sort of took over from the actual Road Watch Committee that the region had going first. To do that, they had to change a number of rules and regulations on how it was going to move ahead. So we do have a couple of people now that are ready to jump right in, and I know that Jamal is going to be sitting on that committee as well. And we will be more involved with YRP rather than we were with York Region. So that's the reason that there was a delay in it, but now it's moving ahead. And as we said, we need to get the pamphlets and take a look at how the new signs are being designed and everything else for the roads. So just in answer to Councillor Roy Clementi's comments. So.
Thank you very much. You certainly have been well involved with it, so I know that you have the details for sure. Thank you. Anything else with this one? I wonder then if we should just have a motion to receive the presentation today and to wait for further information before we approve it as an operating budget item. Mr. Webster, you just popped up.
I did, Madam Mayor. I'm wondering, there's several items to report back on, and I would like to ask the Treasurer Marshall. I think the first two were relatively doable. The tree, a little bit more of a memo on trees, what we've done with the Emerald Ash borer, the FTE and the funding position description and the funding sources. And this council one, I would ask Warren maybe to comment if we might be able to, for next week, to add an item as a budget committee, a special budget committee as part of our session. Otherwise, we would have to default to possibly using the full workshop, but I don't know if that's required on December 8th. So, Mr. Marshall, could you maybe comment on the doability of maybe getting this stuff back, the requested information to council?
Sure, Mr. Webster. Yeah, we should be able to produce some of that information and have it available for the Tuesday council session. I believe we'll be able to have some of the information on the committees available for more council deliberation as well.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
Maybe what we could do, so the clerks, because the clerks are trying to get the agendas out on time, what we'll do is we'll reserve a budget committee session at this point. We'll have a package to be provided under separate cover, and we will commit that it will be provided by Friday of this week and publicly available by Friday of this week as well. The additional budget addendum and information that'll allow council to move this the tax levy budget along for consideration.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Roy Clemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question through you to staff on the mayor and council operating budget. Notice that the new sheets have eliminated the provision for mileage in our budget. It was $5,000. Is the intent there that any additional mileage that councillors are incurring, obviously it's an unusual year, but is that it would be incorporated in the individual discretionary expenses? Is that the intent there?
Mr. Marshall?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah. So we took a look at the past several years of budget expenditures, and there hasn't been anything that's been charged. I believe that that's what's happening now is your council's either absorbing those costs or it's going through the discretionary items. So we feel that that can continue on. So we felt that we could remove the 5,000 from the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Do we have any other items at this time?
Madam Mayor, I think we've covered everything that we had intended to over the past 2 days.
Thank you very much. Then we will just see if I have a resolution here. Okay, thank you. You have the resolution in front of you, I believe. It's fluid. Okay, we have it in front of us. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Crothers, Councillor Foster. You okay with that, Councillor Foster?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the first two lines there. They look pretty much the same to me. Oh, no, we're okay. We're okay.
Okay. Could you put it back on the screen, please? There we go. Be it resolved that the Office of the Mayor and Council 2020-21 proposed business plan and budget review be received, and that the Office of the Mayor and Council 2021 proposed operating budget be received, and that Mayor and Council's Office 2021 proposed operating budget for community initiatives / advisory committees and community groups be received and referred back to staff to report back with further information. Any questions on that motion? All those in favor?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry, just before you call the vote, I think that second clause is repetitive of the first. I think the proposed operating budget for the Office of the Mayor and Council, if we're separating out the community initiatives and advisory committees, that second clause should be approved in principle.
As opposed to be received?
Yeah, because you're already receiving it in the first clause.
Thank you.
And then the understood intent of removing a portion of your office budget is specific to the operating budget for community initiatives and advisory committees, which, as discussed, will report back on December 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other business at this time, so we have an adjournment at 12:48, unless someone tells me we have other business. Should I have a mover and a seconder, please?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Persicini, Councillor Morton. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We were very efficient with time this morning or today, but I think we're in the right direction, and I see very close before us that we're going to be able to announce our budget. So very good. Thank you very much. With that, have a great day. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you at the next meeting, if not before. Thank you.
And stay warm.
Take care.